Being 6 o'clock, I'll call the Charter Review Committee meeting of March 19th to order. This time, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please all stand. Join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I'd like to welcome everyone. A couple quick announcements. As everyone knows, throughout the course of the day, our chairman, Mr. Golden, is ill today, so he's opted not to come in. But he's passed the duties on to myself and to Michelle, and I think Michelle's got everything well in hand. So we should have a productive meeting. The second thing is, it appears we have 3 full-time members out this evening for different reasons, but we do have our 2 alternates, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Hanlon, that will operate as voting members this evening. No one has any objection to that. We can go forward with the agenda as Mr. Golden has left it for us. First thing on the agenda, if we are prepared, if we're ready as a group, we can approve the minutes of previous meetings. There's 2 meetings to do, the 5th and 12th of March. The meeting minutes for the 12th just came out yesterday, so if anyone has any desire to extend that for one meeting, I don't think there'd be any objection, but I think we could certainly take care of the meeting minutes of March 5th if the committee so inclined.
I think there was one place there where it said, I didn't bring it, I guess. It says employee instead of member, or
What was the first word?
the minutes, yeah, here it is. Okay, A and F employee, did that maybe should be member?
No, it's whether it's a town, yeah, that's right, town employees should be an A and F member. So that's on page 4.
Page 4 of 10,
Page 4 of 10,
halfway down.
yes.
Just below the box. Michelle, are you hearing the discussion on the minutes?
Got it. Thank you. I got it.
Okay. All right, so we'll make that correction. Are there any other omissions or corrections to be had on the March 5th minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes with the correction? Mr. Hanlon motions. And second, Ms. Voltrain seconded. No discussion. We have a vote on it to approve March 5th minutes.
Call the roll because we're.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to call a roll. My mistake. And I know he does it by the order of the thing. Okay, so I think he does the alternates first. So Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
you're a voting member? Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon? Ms. Cavaco was not here. Alan Costello, I'm gonna vote yes. Mr. Hutchinson, not here with us this evening. Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Levin?
Yes.
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 Ms. Voltrain?
Yes.
Yes, as well. Mr. Zuccarelli is not here this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a big block down here. I'm sorry, Mr. Pizer. You got like twice the size of block as anyone
Just in a
else.
fit of pique, and also because I wasn't here, I'm going to abstain.
You're gonna abstain, okay, I'm sorry. One abstention from Mr. Pizer. Okay, we're in the second column. Ms. Voltrain has already voted yes. Mr. Zuccarelli is not here. Mr. Golden, unfortunately, not here. And that's everyone. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, very good.
May I ask one question?
Sure.
That was the long meeting, right?
Selectmen's meeting straight.
All the way down, last door on the left.
Just before you hit the glass doors.
I'm sorry, Ms. Voltrain.
That was the long meeting, so I wasn't there for the whole meeting, is what I'm.
You are allowed to vote whether you are there.
For
or
the
not.
minutes.
For the minutes, yes. You can always vote as to whether or not you believe the minutes are appropriate, whether or not you're physically present. It's up to you, it's your option as to whether you wish to abstain or not.
Thank you.
You feel uncomfortable? Do you want
No,
to
I'm
have
fine.
her make note of it?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
because Everything else is,
All right.
there were no votes after that.
All right, at this time, is there a desire by the committee to approve the March 12th minutes? That was our last meeting.
Not hearing
6
an
pages.
objection, I will move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
And I'll second it.
Okay, so that still requires a roll call vote under the circumstances, okay? So at this time, Mr. Bolton on the March 12th minutes, please.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Hanlon.
Yes.
Mr. Rocco's out, Mr. Costello, yes. Mr. Hutchinson out, Mr. Lawler.
Yes.
Mr. Levin, March 12th minutes.
Yes, I watched the video. I didn't attend the video, but I watched the meeting on Zoom.
Okay. Mr. Pizer,
Yes,
okay. Ms. Voltring,
I abstain.
you're abstaining on that one,
I
okay?
wasn't there.
All right,
I
fair
didn't see
enough.
the video.
Mr. Zuccarelli and Mr. Golden are not here this evening, so that takes care of the minutes. We're in good shape with the minutes. Not seeing any public in attendance and not seeing any public on Zoom. This is the time we would normally do public comment. We'll hold that over if the public shows up, but there's no one that has any specific public comment tonight within the group. We'll go right through that. Go to discussion items. Chapter 3, the executive branch. I have some instruction from the chair. He has asked that sections 3.4, 3.5, and 3.14, we make a motion to table those until such time as he's returned to join the group. Does anyone have any objection? Moving to table those 3 topics until such time as Mr. Golden is back.
No.
so move.
Okay,
Second.
seconded. Okay, we're gonna have to vote again. Mr. Bulletin,
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Rocco is out, Mr. Costello, yes, Mr. Hutchinson is out, Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
Mr. Levin.
Yes,
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pizer,
Yes,
Ms. Voltran.
Yes.
Very good. Mr. Zuccarelli, Mr. Golden are not in attendance. All right, so that brings us all the way down to, in between the second bullet and the third bullet, user guide language. And I was instructed, just before the meeting that that's a document that Mr. Pizer has worked with a few members of the committee. And at this time, would you like to speak to that,
I would.
document? Michelle's gonna put it on the screen for us to review.
None of this is going to be a surprise to the committee, since we've been going through this the entire time that the committee has been together. On the one hand, I have proposed, and the chairman certainly has supported, the idea that extraneous material not be included in the charter itself. Mr. Hutchinson in particular, but other members as well, have suggested that it's important that the public, especially citizens of the town, have the ability to navigate town government. And that if we're taking some of the things out of the charter that might be seen as navigational tools rather than directive tools, we ought to come up with a method of supporting that. And I want to thank Alan and Steve and the missing Joe for reading the material and commenting on the material. And you now see what we've come up with. Mr. Hutchinson has suggested that communication is a vital tool. And I see this user guide as a very specific means of the town communicating with the public. In a way, we have a website that should accomplish some of the aims that the user guide is designed for, but it doesn't, not well enough. So what I'd like to see, and I'll just give a couple of examples, is I worked for the town for 30 years and was associated with the town for 15 years before that. And the entire time I was there, I would discover what department does what. And it ought not to be that hard, and most people aren't going to work for the town for 45 years. So what I foresee is that it doesn't specify, but what I foresee is an electronic version with a bunch of hyperlinks. So, and a wonderful search engine. That is sort of the point. So when a person says, I want to know, what does it take to have a non-binding public opinion vote put on the town ballot? You put in non-binding public opinion vote. You don't have to know that the clerk's office is the one who does it, and therefore you would be able to come up with that sort of information. When I say overseen by the town manager, it would be overseen by the town manager in the same way that the town manager oversees all town business. So that I wouldn't expect the town manager to spend 8 to 10 o'clock at night designing this user guide. What I would expect is that he would call the town clerk and say, I want you to do the town clerk section, call the DPW director and say, you do the DPW section, and keep it updated. All of the references that we've seen in the charter that we've eliminated, which say, yeah, that's not a town decision because it's a state law, those could be referenced in the user guide as well, so that a person who wants to employ town government to do what he wants to do can get it done. I presented the words to you, I won't read them, and we've changed the terminology from handbook to user guide to give it a more accurate representation of what it's going to accomplish. We'll do that last sentence is a separate matter. The last paragraph is a separate matter, so I won't deal with that.
So you want to read this into the record? Is that what you, I apologize, is that what you said?
If you want me to,
I'm sorry, before you, Ms. Wilson, do you have your hand up?
Well, if he's going to read it into the record, I'll wait till after that.
Okay.
okay, overseen by the town manager, the town shall prepare and issue a public user guide to town operations in a form it deems appropriate. At a minimum, such guidelines shall include descriptions of A, town government structure, what persons are elected or appointed by whom, their terms when they meet, and a description of their roles. Each town board, committee, or other subdivision of the town, including town meeting, shall provide the town manager and maintain as current a more detailed description of its operations, including any rules, regulations, policies, practices, or procedures unique to that body. B, town departments, a description of the functions of each town department and the rules, duties, and responsibilities it must follow. The guide must indicate relationships among departments. It must describe any enforcement responsibility. C, redress/assistance procedures. Identification as to how to seek assistance from the town or propose changes to the manner in which it functions, including generally the information that must be provided, the forms, if any, which must be completed, the deadlines which must be met, and to whom and in what manner they must be submitted.
Okay, very good. Anyone have any input or questions? Ms. Wilson, go right ahead.
I have two.
Okay, go right ahead.
So one is the name. And I wondered if the name, and now I see here, could be a little more specific, such as user guide to Plymouth town operations. I mean, I know that it has been generated from our charter committee and from what the changes we have made in our charter. But I don't think that calling it the charter user guide is right at all. But when I heard you read this, Larry, something like user guide to Plymouth town operations would be in my estimation, a more informative title.
I certainly have no objection to that.
I don't think there's any real objection to it, just being devil's advocate, I just wanna make sure operations isn't all encompassing of everything that goes on in town. Like for the town manager, things like that, day to day.
But maybe there's a better word than operations, is that what you're thinking?
Not a better word, I'm just wanna make sure there's no confusion. If no one else has a problem with it, I'm fine.
Well,
Ms. Bolton, go ahead.
Well, this is, however, this is not something that we're putting in the charter itself. This is the recommendation of the charter committee
Right,
so ultimately, it'll be the town manager of the town that will sort of define exactly what terminology they wish to use when they put it on the website or something like that. We can certainly make a recommendation that we're calling it a user guide, and they can call it the Town of Plymouth User Guide, Town of Plymouth Operations User Guide, Town of Plymouth Government User Guide, whatever that makes sense, but we can certainly make a recommendation with the understanding that the town will, and it's maybe something that the town changes in name as we discover more things that go into it.
and I understand that too. My other, concern is that I recently was reading something about the, CPC and, Community Preservation Committee. And it made me think that maybe it's not a Plymouth Town Committee, but that hopefully it would be included in this.
No, it is.
Okay,
It's certainly a political subdivision of the town, whether it's technically a town committee, it's a quasi-independent body, but it is a political subdivision of the town. So it would certainly be included. I would assume it would be included.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Hammond?
So this is not something you're proposing to insert into the charter.
No, I am.
You are.
Yeah, I mean, that was the proposal, otherwise, it's just if you have a chance, maybe you could do this. I didn't have a specific location, I wasn't proposing that, but,
So you would envision in the table of contents at the beginning of the charter, there'd be a section they could go to find this document and learn how to navigate around?
not necessarily,
No,
no,
okay.
I think that the user guide would be an independent document. What we're doing is we're saying there should be one.
Right,
Not that it's not part of the charter, that, you know, I mean, the user guide itself is not part of the charter. The requirement that there be one is the only thing that would go
oh, I'm
into
with
the
you,
charter.
I misunderstood you, I thought you had told us the end that it was gonna be in the charter. I
Just,
heard you wrong.
these words would go in the chart, but not the user guide itself.
I get you, okay, fair enough. Anyone else have any further questions on the language of this document, Ms. Holcraft?
where do you envision, or you and the committee, or how the, references to mass law, for instance, that we struck?
Well,
And I'm
sorry.
specifically thinking about the sentence, I think it was, that we struck, that the town would be divided into precincts, for instance. How would that, will that be included in this user guide?
Well, we're giving responsibility to the town manager for what's going to go into the guide, but to answer your question, what my expectation is, the town clerk, one of the responsibilities given to the town clerk by the select board, which actually holds that responsibility, is to divide the town into precincts. So I would expect that the town clerk would say, every 10 years, we're going to divide the town into precincts. This is the method we use and the reason that we do it. And then she would present a link to Mass General laws.
Good, thanks.
Mr. Levin, I apologize, I missed your
That's
hand.
okay, that's okay. Yeah, I agree. I think what should be in the charter is we talked about back where you post things for certain meetings and I think it should be something that's mandate. I don't know if people realize, but in the budget for 2025, there is a position called, I'm gonna call it communications manager. I'm not sure that's the right title. But I think, to help manage the communications, and I think this would be one of those things that hopefully would become part of their, their goals and responsibilities. And I think it's got to go just beyond the departments. I think over time it grows to talk about all aspects of the town, not just the departments, but the committees. And, I know the COPC is working on their own guide for town meeting members, and it could become part of that. In my opinion, to answer Martha's question, a section of this guide would talk about the different state statutes that affect the town, like Plymouth, that people could go to. And it could be, it's something in an electronic format, but, that's searchable. The technology to do that today is so robust. Not to go back to what I said in the beginning, but that discussion about Mr. Trifoletti, Derek was said, and Harry said, oh, we went and searched the documents. I assume they've now digitized a lot of the paper that's been around for town hall, and it makes it very easily and powerfully searchable. So I think this is a great idea, because as being a newbie to the town and a newbie to these kind of processes, it'd be great to be able to have a reference that I call it a living document that would, be constantly being, revised and renewed as things change and grow and new things come in, old things go and stuff like that. So I'm in great support of this for all aspects of town government.
All right, thank you, Mr. Levin. Ms. Voltrin, go right ahead.
One more question.
Go ahead, there's no problem.
How long do other people think this process might take to get, the first finished product?
Oh, the user.
Are we, like, if somebody I'm talking to says, ask me that question, I could say, oh, probably 2 years, or do any of us know how long it might take?
I don't think it would take nearly that long. I would think it would be
venture a
something.
guess it's to say 6 months.
Oh, geez.
Most of the material is already there, and it's just simply to the extent as the town manager goes through this and says, okay, what are we missing? Which departments, which committees, who hasn't sent something in? That's it. The challenge will be for those committees that are less than diligent in responding to the town manager. But above and beyond that, it doesn't mean we won't have a user guide that's not mostly complete within 6 months. It'll just be a matter of accumulating. And as Mr. Levin said, with a new communications person in charge, that would probably be the point person who would lead all of that and accumulate all that information.
So it wouldn't require going to town meeting to get some money to
No, I think,
complete the project?
I don't really see a big expense with it, because I think the bullet items or the procedures are already in play. They just have to be written down in a format that people could go to, and be documented. I don't think they have to reinvent anything, in my opinion. Mr. Hammond, I'm sorry, Mr.
It's just
Lala?
under town operations, it's one of those designees by the town manager to do. I think you did a great job of this.
Sam, do you have a-
Well, I'm gonna be
Go ahead.
devil's advocate, I guess, because, like most of the people sitting around the table predate the internet. If you wanted something from town hall before the internet, you either had to call them up on the phone, and you might maybe they had an operator, who would direct you to the right department, or you had to go down to town hall and walk in the front door. Now we have the internet. And I think we just redid the town website a year ago, maybe. I forget when it was. The old one was kind of hard to navigate. This is maybe a little bit better. But and I totally agree with the premise that we want citizens, residents, taxpayers to be able to, number one, understand how government works and navigate through when they need something or they have a problem. I just wonder, if the website isn't intended to do exactly that.
Mr. Biden, you ever?
I have an answer to that. Maybe it is, but it doesn't. I was, as a former has-been, called when Mr. Trifletti was trying to determine what had gone on in the past with making the office of moderator a special municipal employee. And I went to the website, and there was eventually documentation, but it was not easily navigated. And it was a matter of finding my way. I am representing the missing Joe, who says that the Len who is knowledgeable about municipal government but comes from a different community, perhaps even a city, or someone who comes from a town but not this town, or somebody who wakes up on Tuesday and says, I'm really upset about my zoning, garbage collection, whatever, finding his way. And I think it's incumbent upon the town to make it as easy as possible. I thought about what you said about the website, and the website sends people to previous articles and places within the town. This would be more all-encompassing, closer to all-encompassing in terms of referencing state requirements, regulations, and processes.
I'm just gonna go to Mr. Levin first, and then Mr. Bolton. Mr. Levin, you're right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, this is, in companies, when they do things, they have process and procedures manuals about how they do things so that it outlives the people that do it today or not there tomorrow, or whatever. That's what this is. I think it's, you ask how long it would take. It just depends on what the scope is. It may have phase one and then phase two. It has to be written. It's an important thing to allow people to be able to say, this is the definitive document, to go to. Right now, we have FAQs, frequently asked questions. Those are only as good as the people who thought up the questions. If you haven't thought of all the questions, you can't have a FAQ. It's going to evolve. It's not going to be perfect on the first pass. It may never be perfect. You always learn things. Somebody will find out we missed something. But the fact that it's an electronic form, it's very easy to modify. You don't have to pay to print it, and you have an outdated one. So again, I think this is something that's just very important for such a complex entity of the town of Plymouth, on a day-to-day basis.
All right, very good. Mr. Bolton and Mr. Lawler, unless you have a point of order or.
Actually, no, go
All
ahead.
right, Mr. Bolton, go ahead.
Just very briefly, I support this as part of the drafting of this, and I think one of the things that I followed what Mr. Hutchinson's regular comments was that while he's worried about things that we're taking out of the charter, I became a little bit more concerned as I looked through the website and other things as to where we're actually still missing a lot of descriptions and procedures from a lot of our town boards and committees. They're just not there. There's a lot of, as Mr. Pizer mentioned, there's a lot of old articles and things like that you can sort of piece things together. But there isn't just a simple, straightforward heading, Conservation Commission. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is the statute, the state statute under which we're organized. This is when we meet. This is how we're appointed. This is and this is roughly what we cover. And if you need to reach us, this is how you reach us. And these are the general forms that you have to apply to submit. That little concise thing, which, yeah, it's nice that they have a page on our website that you can go to. But even there, that little quick sort of 4-paragraph summary isn't there. So by putting this in, we're merely requiring that the information be created in a slightly more concise format for everybody to be able to at least find that first section and work off of that if they need to go further. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Law.
Where are we putting this? Where would you like to? put it?
Well, my thought is I think we have a section, this whole thing's gonna get reorganized, but there
All right,
should be
so in that-
a section about procedures.
All right, in that case, I'm moving the question to, well, create a question to move this and get this, approved.
So you're making a motion that we adopt this as part of the charter.
Actually, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I meant to say.
And I will do that next, but the one thing I just want to clarify is, are we gonna eliminate this last paragraph? We're not gonna adopt this page as
No,
it
no,
reads
no,
today.
down to where it says manner they must be submitted. The next one is a second assignment that I
There
was
you have,
given.
that was a question that was asked.
Yes,
So after the, line item C,
right.
it ends, so it's the pleasure of the committee to vote this in, this 3/4 of this page, into the charter this evening. We have a motion for that. Second,
I'll second.
Steve seconds it, all right. Is there any further discussion on voting it in this evening? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the roll, and we'll start off with Mr. Bolton.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Hamlin.
Yes.
Ms. Kabako is not here this evening. Mr. Costello, yes. Mr. Hutchinson, not here this evening. Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
Mr. Levin.
Yes,
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Pisa,
Yes.
Ms. Boltran,
Yes,
thank you. Mr. Zuparoli and Mr. Golden are not here this evening, so it passes unanimously. So it must be 7-0.
Okay.
0 abstentions. All right, thank you, Mr. Pisa and your committee. You did a nice job.
yeah. Thank you.
I think it's gonna fit the bill.
Then the next one, if we could move the next one as
You wanna,
well.
you wanna take care of that now? We might
This
as
is,
well?
this is 253, and Chairman Golden asked if I could come up with language that's clear. I hope I've done that. This has to do with, I mean, there are two parts. One part is agreeing with the concept, and the second part is, I hope this language is clear. This is two instances, one instance in which a town meeting member moves from his precinct but remains in Plymouth, and then a second instance as a possibility in which a town meeting member moves from Plymouth entirely. And I'll read it if I could. For a representative town meeting member who changes his voter registration from the address from which she was elected and moves from that precinct but remains within Plymouth, his/her term shall end following the next annual town meeting. A representative town meeting member deemed by the Board of Voting Registrars to be ineligible to vote in Plymouth shall cease to be a town meeting member. And just to clarify, technically, it's the Board of Voting Registrars who determines the voting list, and leaving Plymouth is caused to be delisted from that voting list.
Physically leaving the city limits, you cannot vote.
Changing residence, legal residence.
Legal residence, okay. Mr. Long, go
I
ahead.
have a quick question on that, Larry. So let's say that the town meeting member moves physically today, the 19th, right? Does this take effect on the day that the town member moves?
This is going to be a very town clerky answer to your rather good question. Residence is a really difficult concept to grapple with. So, for example, we had a select board member a decade ago or so whose house became uninhabitable, and he moved in with his girlfriend in Kingston. but he didn't establish residence in Kingston. So the answer to your question is, basically, if someone moves to another community and is permanently, expects to be in that community permanently, that would terminate his legal residence at Plymouth. But I can't make a straightforward statement of if he, the moment he crosses the town border, he's no longer a town meeting member.
Isn't that the same thing as eligibility to vote?
Yes.
So
There's a lot of nuance, Mr. President, there's a lot of nuance to eligibility to vote. You could maintain a residence here, you can rent an apartment, and you can own a mansion in Colorado.
Oof,
And you can.
I don't.
And you can spend a bunch of time in Colorado, but as long as you still maintain a residence here and you're legally registered to vote here, they can't kick you out of here.
Unless you were to get a license.
Well, the point is that, with deference to any attorneys in the room, it's really that's one of the items that determines residence. And if someone were going to challenge a person's residence and found out that he had a license in Colorado,
We're talking about driver's license.
driver's license, yep, then there would be at least some sort of expectation. The reason I chose what I did is because that's the clarity that the law provides. And I wish it was easier. People stay on voting lists after they leave town, but one would expect something as important as a town meeting member. When that person left town, that person and didn't plan to come back, that person is very likely to be honest enough to say, I'm gone. And his membership in town meeting is terminated.
Stanley, do you have a question or did you get answered?
I'm good.
Mr. Levin?
Yeah,
You have a
Larry,
question?
just a question about it, just to clarify for me. It says, moves from the precinct remains within Plymouth, his term shall end following the next annual town meeting. So the council,
You're breaking up.
do they stay? What? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat
If
that?
they-
If you're broken up, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. If they
Yeah.
were to move the day after town meeting, would they still stay in that precinct to the next town meeting?
Yes.
Yes,
Technically, yeah.
that is the sentiment in the present charter.
Is that a
Right.
good precedent? Should we not try to fix that?
Well, the theory that the charter committee created was a person studies to become a town meeting representative. And you don't want to get rid of that person for a person who was just on the very last minute getting to be a town meeting member. That was the theory. It's up, people who write charters get to create their own theories. If we don't like that theory, we can come up with a different one.
Okay. Thank you.
Just the semantics. So, the he/she is now out of vogue, as we say, and it's for example, I know that there's a group in front of the select board tonight who are looking to do something to celebrate Trans Day. We probably, in order to just make things easier, the term is, the more ubiquitous term is now they, their, them.
I I physically can't do that. Miss Wilder, Florence Wilder of Sterling Junction, Massachusetts would be she was my English teacher. I would put, from which the member, can we change he, she to the member?
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry, for doing that.
The
The member.
The member.
member, and
The
then,
member was elected, and within Plymouth,
Mm-hmm.
it still is, it's the member apostrophe S term.
the member's term, yep. Okay, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
He probably will go a long way. We fix it now.
Yeah.
Rather than hear about it later.
And just quickly, Larry, and I can do this on my own time, but what language did you alter in the existing 253? What language was confusing or unclear?
Oh, God.
On page 10.
It says a representative town meeting member who moves from the town shall cease to be a town meeting member, and a representative town meeting member who moves from the precinct from which the representative was elected to another precinct may serve only until the next annual town meeting. The town clerk may also declare the seat vacant if the registrars or voters under section 47B, 48, and 49 of chapter 51 of the general laws or any other applicable law determine that the representative town meeting member is illegally or incorrectly registered to vote in that precinct.
So
Just a lot of words.
So this would be
And-
two
and-
basic
and-
plans, 253.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm fine with it, I didn't,
yep,
I read
We,
the section before.
my notes say we amended that,
yep.
that last sentence.
We started to, yeah.
And we
Martha, thank you.
ultimately decided to come back to it. We never made the final amendment.
Okay,
My notes said the same thing.
Okay, so at this stage, we can take a motion to vote on this evening to have this be the new representation of 2-5-3.
Since I did it, I'll move it.
All right?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Bolton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the vote. Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
very good. Mr. Hanlon,
yes,
Mr. Kavako is not here. Mr. Costello, yes. Mr. Hutchinson, not here this evening. Mr. Law.
Yes.
Mr. Levin,
Yes,
thank you, sir. Mr. Pisa,
Yes.
and Ms. Bolton.
Yes.
All right, very good. Mr. Zuccaroli and Mr. Golden are not here this evening.
Okay.
All
I'm
right, so
all
that
done.
concludes Mr.
Yeah.
Pisa's worksheet.
I need you here.
All right, and that brings us next on the agenda to section 3-10, the Conservation Commission. Bolton?
I talked to some people, and have been to a number of the Conservation Commission meetings recently. And I have a suggestion here for, our consideration for whatever that number is, the 3-10.
Did they have any interest in coming before us to make suggestions for changes, or did they convey them to you?
I didn't ask them.
Oh, no,
So,
okay.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I thought that's what you were
But the
getting.
last person I talked to was around 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay.
And that was Bruce Howard, who is very aware of the Conservation Commission and was involved quite a bit before. And so could I read what he and I, in the end, came up with?
All right, just give me 1 second to see if, okay, so it's section 10, Conservation Commission. Michelle, is there a possibility of putting that on the screen for everyone to see that section 10, Conservation Commission?
3-10.
3-10-1 and 3-10-2. It's a very small section, but
What page is that?
I have
22,
23.
23.
All right,
it's line number 580.
yeah, I got it.
Do you see it on the screen?
Not yet.
Not as of yet.
No?
No, you still have Larry's thing up for 253.
Oh, okay. Do you see it?
Now,
No,
Okay.
now you see it, now you don't.
Now
Ah,
we see it.
Now
now
we
we-
see.
all right, so it's 3-10-1 and 3-10-2, that makes up the whole Conservation Commission.
Right,
All right, so you have some suggestions for,
I do.
to supplement what's existing, to add to it, or to replace?
Replace,
Replace, okay, go right ahead.
three sentences, I believe. There shall be a conservation commission composed of 7 members, that's not new. 3 members shall be appointed by the select board, 2 members appointed by the planning board, and 2 members appointed by the moderator. That is new. All members shall be appointed for 3-year overlapping terms and commit, oh, that's not new, that section, this following is, and commit to completing the Mass Association of Conservation Commission Fundamentals Certification Training Program for Conservation Commissioners within the first 3 years following their appointment. And this is a little change from the last sentence. The commission shall exercise such powers and duties as prescribed by Mass Wetlands Protection Act, Plymouth Wetland Bylaws, and the commission rules and regulations. And the reason for the change related to 3 different appointment process, 3 different committees appointing is related to the concerns that the commission is not balanced in terms of the membership at this point.
Can you tell us again what the 3 body, the select board, the moderator, and
Planning.
planning board?
Is that number one, just from what I've learned, just sitting here for the last several months, is it a mass general law that the select board appoints a conservation commission?
I'm looking that up because I believe it is certainly in there. I'm looking to see whether or not that is.
The second thing, Martha, what certification you say that you require in the first 3 years?
Right, rather than say that there be,
Mass Conservation Commission appointees.
I'm sorry, Michelle, was that you?
maybe that came.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the part about recommending that members complete the Mass Association of Conservation Commission Fundamentals Certificate Training Program is instead of recommending that 2 members be certified conservationists or environmental specialists. I wasn't familiar with any particular profession, and either was Bruce Howard.
The only question I have is, why do you give such a long period to achieve that, 3 years? They could be voted out of office before they are required to get that certificate, is it?
Well, maybe it should be within the first 2 years,
Okay, I just
that
didn't know
part
the
of it
flexible, yeah.
Or 1 year.
or possibly.
Mr. Bolton, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8C, in towns. That, in towns, this is towns adopting a conservation commission. Let me find the specific language again. In
Martha, do you know?
In towns,
Oh,
they
sorry.
shall be appointed by the selectmen, except in towns having a manager form of government in which towns appointments shall be made by the town manager, subject to the approval of the selectmen. So that is statute. I know of one town that got the special legislation to allow their conservation commission to be elected. But you cannot, we cannot change that, that's general law, so we do not have the authority to do that.
So what you're saying is, if I heard you correctly, we need to make the change to the town manager with the approval of the select board,
And we have to include that.
shall appoint a
Or you take it out and
Oh.
say, see,
Or
mass
say-
general law.
Or say per the general laws, but that's, I'm looking very
It
specific.
sounds like the select board can do it unless they want the town if you have a town manager. they
It
do.
technically,
Which we do.
again, they say a town manager form of government, which is, again, I'm not quite clear what they mean, but specifically what it says, and I'll read it again. So, the first half of the sentence talks about cities. Then comma, and in towns, they shall be appointed by the selectmen, comma, excepting towns having a manager form of government, comma, in which towns, this is their language, so in which towns, appointments shall be made by the town manager, subject to the approval of the selectmen.
Oh, yeah, no, I hear.
That is the statutory language, so we have no options on that.
So of interest,
So you're saying the language of this sentence isn't even correct.
our current,
It it could be argued technically that, but again, when they say that the appointments are made by the town manager, approved by the select board, essentially that may just be a ministerial task that the town, it shouldn't be the town manager choosing, but that may be the way it comes out, so.
No, I think the town manager, well, I mean, the select board always has the option of canning the town manager. But if the select board
Well,
said that they,
Well, they can, the town.
Or not
manager's choice.
approving his
yeah, if the
recommendation.
select board said they want Larry Pfizer and the town manager doesn't want Larry Pfizer doesn't get,
Right.
because the town manager in essence nominates, and the
Right.
the select board.
It is a more
blesses.
ministerial, but nonetheless, that is the form
Is that what
that they're
goes on
supposed to take.
No.
And we're doing that in some sense because the town manager runs this system where you put in your desire to be on a committee through this form. And he's not gonna sit there and evaluate those.
I think
saying.
we're, go ahead, Mr. Levin, finish up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to ask another question of Martha. Does anybody know how long this certification takes? Because my opinion is.
I forgot to ask that question. I do not know. Sorry.
Because I think giving him any more than a few months to do that is counterproductive. You're asking them to be involved in something that needs, we've talked, sorry, I'm digressing. We talked about having people that are knowledgeable about the job they're signing up to do. This is another one where if this certification is something that they do, in a expedited way, it gives them more tools to be able to be more effective at their job. So giving them 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, what do they do for that 1 year? I don't know what it takes. If it's a 6-month or 12-month process, I can understand that. But if it's something they could complete in the first 3 months of their membership, they should be required to do it as soon as possible.
Good
I
point.
agree, I think that's something we should get an answer to first, and then the second thing, and I'm certainly not an attorney, but I think that statute has a hole in it, because to my knowledge, there's no such form of government is a manager form of government,
No,
not to my knowledge anyway.
I
So-
think that the descriptor in state law does include, our form of government is a board of selectmen, town meeting, strong town manager form of government, because having a town manager is different from having a town executive secretary or administrator.
Okay,
And another point I wanted to make is that the Charter Commission's proposal included the wording that's in our current charter, and that went through all sorts of people looking at it.
Not
And-
carefully.
Oh, you mean they didn't catch this?
Evidently, we have Steve, thank God. Can
But
I suggest that once we finish this conversation, that we invite perhaps Mr. Howard and perhaps Mr. Hartman, who is the staff liaison to the commission, as soon as possible, but I'm not gonna feel comfortable voting on this because there are so many questions.
no, I think you're 100% right. I was just gonna ask that, if you have any objection, if we table
No.
this and get some of the
That's a good
answers that Mr. Levin brought up, Mr.
I'm sorry, I
Heisen
didn't
brought
get
up.
to it any sooner.
No,
Last
it's a
night.
good, it's good that you open up the argument, the discussion on it, because, I, looking at it, I thought this was gonna be a breeze right through, but obviously it deserves a little bit of time. So we'll invite them to a future meeting. Mr. Walton, go right ahead.
I just want to add one other thing for our consideration, and I don't know, it's something I'd like to ask the Conservation Commissioners, whether I've noted that other towns have alternates on their conservation committee, non-voting members of their Conservation Commission. And again, with the idea to some degree that you're giving people an opportunity to get experience so that they become, maybe that's something we also may wish to consider, if that's something the Conservation Commission thinks might be beneficial to them.
Good point, Mr. Lawler. 1 second, Mr. Lawler, go right ahead.
Hold on, Alan.
Wait, oh, it's Len, hold on, Len, hold on. I know
That's
you're
fine, I
only,
will.
you're only at 96 baud over there, so just hold on for a second, okay?
So if the statute says X, and we can't go over the, outside the guardrails on the X, right? So why don't we just put the statute in here? Because we can't change it, right?
Right, I mean, I think
So
so.
just take the statute, just drop it in, that, if we can't change it.
Is the statute only, you think, for, I mean, obviously you read it for Conservation Committee, but do other committees have the same statute?
Well, there are certainly.
In
other
this
boards.
particular-
There are there are few committees that are created via statute that they're not.
Yeah.
are-
So if the
finance committees are a statutory creation as well.
But if we can't change the statute, right? And then what do?
We follow it.
Well, I mean, I
I think
think,
that's a great point. I think we've already done in the past. We've dropped in that language, the state
Right.
statute is what we follow, so you're right on the line.
but the answer to your question is, I think we should bring this up in a public way, let the select board know what we're planning to do, because the alternative is to create a special, a new state law. Local option, local option. I'm not recommending it, but I mean, that's a possibility, and so we should either do what you said, or wait till the select board says they have a reason that they would rather see something else.
So then leave it the way it is, or?
No, can't leave it.
No,
I think it's
or-
fixed now that we know.
Now that we know, we need to change it
Or
to make sure it
change
complies with
it.
the statute.
Just let them know we're changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Martha, if you're no objection, I'll get with the chairman, Mr. Golden, and have him schedule all the pertinent people and
That sounds
that should
good.
be notified and maybe come before us, so we address everyone's issue all at once. Mr. Pisa?
Yeah, before we drop this, it drives me crazy when we have, in most instances, you must, without saying what happens if you don't. So I would hope that language, when they come back to us, is cleaned up. We recommend, or we require. And if we require, then you're automatically dropped, your dog is taken away from you, you know, whatever the consequence, but I think we should put it in.
No, I'm with you. Mr. Hanlon?
Well, it seems to me that this sentence, because that's all it is one sentence, has been apparently missed by all previous charter review committees. And this has to go to who? The Attorney General to get, they review it, so it's, make sure it's constitutional, doesn't, and it comports with, or doesn't conflict with state law. So apparently they missed it as well. I don't know.
Well, that's why I think, when the chairman finally, we get to the bottom as soon as we can, and let it all the powers to be known that there's a little bit of a.
Yeah, I guess the
mishap.
nuance I would ask, you know, it says the selectmen get to appoint, and except when you have a town manager form of government, whatever that is. Is it a strong town manager or a weak town manager? Is a town administrator doesn't count? So does this in effect, because it says the town manager appoints, subject to the approval of the selectmen. So the selectmen still have the ultimate authority to approve or reject.
Right, but that's different from choosing.
I suppose it's
Does
nuance.
the town manager have any influence on the candidates that go before the select board today?
Only administrative.
Okay.
Can I,
Mr. Bolton, go ahead. Len, did you have something? Go right ahead.
yeah, I mean, I did a search while you guys were talking for this fundamental certificate program. There's something called the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions.
Yes.
It's actually, and there's this fundamental, and it costs money. If you're a non-member, it costs you $85 per class. If you go to it, I will, I'll send it to Michelle, maybe she can put it in the minutes. And it's a fairly involved, there's refresher course, there's elective units. It's a fairly involved process to pass this test. Again, I still don't think we should, you know, you should have 3 years to do it. But it's like the Mass Municipal Association. It sounds like it's called the MACC. So I just found that.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll address that as well when they're in. Mr. Lawler, and Mr. Bolton?
Yeah, again, Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, what is the relevancy of all this? Because if we can't go outside the guardrails of what the state is saying, then why are we
Well,
even?
we can make rules. We can make rules for the qualifications of our.
So we can go above and beyond what you had stated?
All I'm stating is that the statute says how they have to be appointed and by whom. It doesn't necessarily say who is qualified to be. We are allowed to do those types of things.
Oh,
I'd like to just
Mr. Bolton, go right ahead.
I'd just like to raise an organizational point for the group to consider as we go through this. When I looked at Conservation Commission, and then, you know, we have other committees that are referenced in here, there doesn't seem to necessarily be a rhyme or reason as to why, for example, the Conservation Commission is listed where it's listed versus when we're talking about a bunch of departments and boards, and then you have a committee, and then you have the ZBA, and then the planning department, and then the planning board. I don't think that these committees are technically part of the executive form of government. They're part of government. They are committees. These are standing committees. And I would like to suggest that we consider actually creating a section of the charter that is literally just standing committees, so that people know where we're talking about committees. This is the committee section, and the committees can be identified as this is the committee, this is what they do, and this is who appoints them. And it doesn't get mixed in as to, are they part of the executive, part of the legislative, et cetera. They're just a standing committee.
So when you say standing committees, think of it in a different term, or in a different way. You're really talking about committees that are authorized by state statute.
No, not
Like,
necessarily.
like the finance committee or the,
No, we can have,
CPC.
I mean, we have other committees here. We have, LUAC is a charter committee. There's no state statute that says you have to have one of those. What we've decided is that there are certain committees that are of such a nature, we want them in our charter, that they can never be disbanded absent a change in the charter. Versus ad hoc committees that you create, whoever the select board says, the dog park committee, and then they can get rid of the dog park committee. And we make those committees disappear, but we have certain committees that we believe are of such importance. And I think maybe when we talk about, I know we talked about creating almost a separate section for advisory and finance committee, maybe that actually becomes the first of the list of chartered committees. So I just throw that out as a discussion point for something to consider, because as I was reading this, I was trying to figure what's the rhyme and reason. And now I'm going to Mr. Hutchinson's approach, which is in essence to say, well, one of the things that'll make the charter easier to understand, if things that go together are grouped together. So I just raised that as a.
No, I like the idea, so we
I
would
appreciate
basically
that.
go down the list of all committees that would fit in there and do exactly what we're doing tonight, standardize the language as to how they come about, who gets to be on, and what the quality. A very standardized section, I like that, I like the idea, something we'll talk about when the full committee is back on, from the back.
Yeah, so
Does anyone have any objections to that?
my request is that it be put on as a future agenda item.
I don't think there's any problem with that, 'cause I think it's a pretty good idea.
I'm just,
Go ahead, Mr. Pfizer.
I'm just wondering, whether the chair was planning to create that, but, whether it's all of us or the chair, that's either way.
Let's just make note of it,
What's that?
make note of it.
Yeah,
So
There
we
aren't
don't
very
forget it.
many of them.
No, there's about four or five.
right.
Well, that is a good exercise, is how many do you think fall into that category?
Well, we got rid of one of them.
Would you consider building committee one of them, or would?
If it's in the
That
charter,
is
yeah.
appointed, yeah, I mean, one of the ones in the grouping,
Yes.
because I know it's appointed by, school committee and others.
Well, then it's,
Um,
if it's a chartered committee, then yes, if it's,
We'll just go through it, Steve.
yeah.
I'll just go through it, so if it's in the existing charter today,
We don't
it
have
automatically is gonna make the cut.
Right, unless it's something like the ones that we, like.
Yeah,
we told-
Eliminated.
Yeah, we told development industrial, I get you.
All right,
That's
that's
not
gone.
it tonight, but.
No, but just.
I don't know if it's tonight, just
No,
for future, we'll bring it up in a future meeting.
Yeah,
and zoning board of appeals,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
well, the ZBA is actually.
part of planning.
You
So,
can keep that as
Mr. Chair,
part of
how do
the
we do that?
planning.
What's that, sir?
How do we do that? How do we
Board of
make
Health.
sure we don't, that doesn't fall through the cracks, what Steve just said?
Well, I think, Michelle, if you can just.
We're gonna make
note
it-
it for a future agenda item.
Michelle will tell David, I'll tell David, and, the minutes will tell David that that's gonna be an agenda item. The next time we have a little lull on the agenda. Make sense?
Yeah.
Alright, I think it's a great idea, so I think it should be explored.
So I think we're ready, not to steal Mr. Lawler's, motions, but, I'd like to move that we table discussion of 3-10, until a future meeting.
I'm sure you'll have a second, we can vote on it,
Second that.
okay? Okay, Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon,
yes,
Mr. Costello, yes. I probably have to say your name, sorry, Ms. Cavaco is not here tonight, Mr. Costello, yes. Mr. Hutchinson, not here this evening, Mr. Lawler.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Levin,
Yes,
okay, Mr. Pfizer,
Yes,
okay, Ms. Beltran,
Yes,
okay, Mr. Zuccaroli and Mr. Golden, I'm not here this evening. All right, so that brings us to the next order of business, which is 3-14, the zoning board of appeals.
3-12.
3-12.
Section 12.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going off of this thing here. Okay, so section 12.
3-12,
14 is planning board.
I'm sorry?
14 is planning board.
Oh, my mistake. Okay, you're exactly right. 3-12, ZBA.
It looks like it's on.
All right, so, Michelle, could you, oh, you have it on there, beat me to it, very good. Way ahead of me. All right, do we want to go through this 3-12-1 or 3-12-2? Can read it aloud, or does anyone have any, input? Or that they brought with them this evening that they might like to, supplement or add to?
Can I ask, is there any,
Mr. Levin, go right ahead.
is there any, Stephen, can you find and see if there's any statutory requirement for the? I mean,
They do, there is a statute, but there's nothing in here that says that we are doing anything incorrect. Zoning boards of appeals can alternately be appointed or elected, that's up to the town to decide. We have by charter said that we want them appointed, and as a charter committee, we do not have the authority to change that.
okay,
Just quickly, would this be one of the, committees that go into the new section?
It very well may.
it should.
Mr. Hanlon?
You know, just a wording issue, it says 2 associate members. Are those different than alternate members?
They call them associate members here,
It's the same idea.
it's the same idea. I actually, it's a very good point, because on the, we don't have it in the planning section, and I actually was going to add it, because we have, the statute allows an alternate. And I have to take a look at the statute and whether they refer to it as an associate member or an alternate member, but I think consistency is probably a good thing. And so.
So you're saying we should call it alternate just to be.
Or associated, however the statute refers to.
Yeah, it might be a statute thing. There you go.
The statute. Let me go to 40.
Now, it probably falls under their rules as a zoning board
41A, yeah.
of appeals, but how do they pick which members hear a particular case? Sometimes I hear they go back to an old case, they have to find out who was on that case at that time. Is that someone might have missed a night or was absent and one of the associates takes over? Or do they randomly mix it up to sort of 5 members?
No,
hear a case?
it's not random, but,
It's not a hard and fast rule. Alright. And so we're waiting on to see if it's a statute, but other than that, is there anything that anyone would like to speak to in the zoning board of appeals section? Mr. Waller?
So we're looking at both 3-12-1 and 3-12-2 together?
Yes.
We're looking at both those, right now?
Yep.
Okay, on the 3-12-2, the board shall exercise such powers and duties as prescribed by general law, this charter, and town bylaws. My question is, this charter, are we adding anything to the ZBA right now? Does the charter add anything to the responsibilities of the ZBA? So if we're not adding any responsibilities to the ZBA, why is this charter in there?
That same point was brought up by Bruce Howard relating the charter, the Conservation Commission. And so
It's the
we
same language,
recommended
yeah.
taking that out and adding as, so.
Well, let's go to the powers to be. Steve. It says this, go ahead.
Mr. Lawler, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Levin, go ahead.
So the question is,
Oh, Len, we can't hear you.
this
Yeah,
charter
Mr. Levin.
control, sorry,
Just wanna
change it.
stop.
My bad.
I just wanna stop you before you get too far, but it's very difficult to hear, you're very garbled, I don't know if it's on your end. But I just wanted to stop you so you can start again, please.
You're muted.
Now he's muted, right?
Yeah.
Michelle, can we unmute him, or did we
I'm
mute
gonna
him?
try to call in because it's something's going on with my computer. I don't know what.
Okay.
Do you think it's in the interest of this committee to hear from the representative from the ZBA? Can we invite the chairman in here to see if they have any rules or regulations they'd like to see end up in a charter?
I did talk with Dave.
Oh, you did?
Today, and he didn't have any recommendations,
Mr. Peck is not on this.
I was gonna say,
but he was.
yeah,
Yes, but he's not.
but we could ask the present chairman, Mr. Mann, is it Mr. Mann, I think, right? M-A-N-N,
Me,
Buster,
Buster me.
Mr. Main, okay, yeah.
You wanna just leave this? And
I'm
move?
thinking that it's gonna be a carbon copy of the last one, so we might wanna leave it before we get too involved in it, and then I just wanna check and see if the last piece of business, the building committee, might even fall into the same category, and maybe we can schedule the three chairmen on the same evening and take care of that in one fell swoop when we discuss Steve's idea. And put them all in their own chapter.
So I can certainly say, at least for example, the planning board, so the planning board does not make reference to, the statute does not make reference to having an alternate or an associate member. We're allowed to do it, but there's nothing, it just says that we can have no fewer than 5 and no greater than 9 members. So that was something I was gonna actually include when we get to planning board, was giving, just allowing the permission to have an associate member, make it an associate, we'll keep them as an associate member and defining their responsibilities. So now when we talk about the ZBA,
So, Steve, we're just wondering whether, is it associate or
Alternate.
alternate?
looking under the statute.
I just wanted you to know on their website, they refer to the ZBA as the 2 alternates. They mark their members 2 alternates and they name them. Just wanted you to know that.
So it sounds like they're interchanging the word associate and alternate
Yeah.
in a few places.
Yeah.
But we wanna keep everything,
Standard.
I can tell you the statute there, and if provision for associate members has been made, the chairman of the board may designate any such associate member. That's, chapter 48, section 12. So that statute specifically does reference an associate member for the ZBA.
So they
All
should,
right, we'll keep that.
we're right there.
So the charter is correct, and they should change that on the website.
They should correct their website. I'll let them know that.
is there a difference, Steve?
No, other than again, I think, I'll do a little bit more work on the planning board side, because I've always looked at it. I remember seeing something there.
Then,
So long, go ahead.
then back to my question. Do you wanna make a change here? Because this charter right now does not designate anything specific to what the zoning board of appeals has to do, right?
Well, it has to
So we
follow,
probably should ask them.
but they really are restricted by what's allowed. A ZBA is created by statute. Basically, it says if you adopt the ZBA approach, then this is what the statute says, this is what they do.
But on this language, the charter has nothing to do with it, so I was just gonna strike this charter and town bylaws.
Well, it does, because in terms of, for example, having associate members, the state statute says if your bylaws or if your charter calls for it, then this is what the associate members do. So it actually does give us the authority in our bylaws or our charter to call for associate members. So
But
it
that's-
does actually make sense.
But it says that in 312-1.
Right.
Which is.
So we either get rid of, no, we
don't
can't
get
we don't get rid of anything, but we should get rid of just language that's not applicable. So I'm just saying, why not get rid of this charter?
Well, because the charter, it is kind of circular, but the charter is allowing for the associate members under state statute, and then we're saying that you're allowing the charter to do what it is that the charter did.
All right,
It's a legal circuity, but it does kind of make some semblance. There's at least some use for having it here versus some of the other places where you're actually right, it hasn't had any
okay,
validity.
okay.
It's not even it's not even a definition of the word associate, alternate. So why are we even using associate?
Well, it's in the statute.
I know, I'm just wondering if,
Well, I'll have to look up what the state statutes reference that, but they define an associate.
a partner or colleague, it's
Oh, maybe they
someone
define
connected
it.
with an organization.
No, it'll be within, you don't look at that,
Okay.
you don't look at the dictionary definition unless there isn't a legal definition created.
Okay.
They define an associate member as a non-voting member.
Oh, okay, then fair enough, I understand.
Mr. Chairman, since we seem to be in agreement that we're not gonna change the language, perhaps we should just go on.
Yeah, no, I think,
And if at some point someone were to discover a change, we can always return.
yeah, I think this falls in with the other one, I think a little more research has to be done, bring it back at a different time. Mr. Hanlon?
No, I'll hold for a minute.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'll hold, I got a different question.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on from the ZBA, that leads us to the last point of business for the evening, and that's the building committee. Now, we might very well feel the same way about the building committee. The building committee has quite a bit more language in it, in its subsection, it's section 16. My guess is that we're gonna find that we're gonna probably wanna research that as well. Mr. Hanlon?
So similar to ZBAs and conservation commissions, are building committees covered under state statutes?
I don't think so.
No,
They're
they
not.
are not. They are not.
Oh, that's good.
That is a creation of the town.
All right, then I mean, a lot of towns have building committees. But one of the things that I've never liked is people who are part-time citizens, who all have good intentions, managing complex multi-million-dollar projects that I think should be managed by paid professional staff.
So your point being,
My point being that it says right here in the.
So you wanna change the
language
makeup of the
thing.
members, the 9 members?
Makeup shouldn't be.
Whenever this work is authorized by representative town meeting, it doesn't describe what this work is. The building committee shall be responsible for the oversight of all work relating thereto, including site planning, preliminary architectural drawings, final plans, and the oversight of all construction. You know, there's so much screwed up construction in the state. They had a construction reform act 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you remember that? Something like that? And I don't remember, a lot of it had to do with schools. You know, like one of the schools we got, that
It's gone.
Plymouth South High School, that lasted only 25 years and was falling apart. So they put in place this requirement for the owner's project management. And, you know, there's probably lots of different provisions to the Construction Reform Act, and I'm not that familiar with them. But hiring a owner's project manager at the beginning of the project, who's, part of his role, their role is site planning, preliminary architectural drawings, final plans, and oversight of construction. That's why you have a paid professional. Why do we need a bunch of citizens? They may all be architects, attorneys, persons employed in the construction industry, but they're part-time
Or no time.
or no
Mr.
time.
Bowles, do you have an answer for that or a response?
I do,
Alright.
given that this was a very large part of my practice. I can tell you that ultimately, these types of committees were responsible for oversight of very small projects. Once you got to any significant project, you had multiple layers of professional oversight. First, you had the architect was the one who was always going to be serving as the owner's project representative in terms of the design side, reviewing the various design drawings, overseeing the design professional staff, obviously doing the review of contractor submittals, payment applications, et cetera. That was under the standard side. You then had your construction manager side, whether you had an independent construction manager or you used the construction manager as being the contractor, the GC is the construction manager overseeing the subs. Those were the ones who were always responsible. What they basically did was those people reported to this committee. So rather than having your architect or your GC submitting papers to the select board, they would then submit their papers for final owner approval. When you needed an owner approval for something, it would go to this committee, because this committee was committee professional. And honestly, and I don't know if we do it here, we should, typically they identified one person on the committee was the project representative for a specific project. So you didn't have the entire committee debating everything, you had one person ultimately responsible as the representative of the town with respect to that project. But they really aren't the project oversight, and maybe that's where you have to get into this, and it's a good point. But maybe we say that, we can point out that they're the ultimate responsible party, but they don't necessarily have to, but they can retain outside professionals in order to do that work.
Well, I think, once again, I'm not that familiar with the Construction Reform Act, but my belief is that there's some sort of dollar cutoff for this owner's project manager. So let's say it's $1 million, anything over $1 million, you have to have an owner's project manager. They are totally different from the architect or the engineer who's doing the design and may do the construction not supervision, but observation. That's the right.
Well, no, those are actually construction supervisors. They're not construction observers. Those are actually.
No, I'm making a distinction between what the typical role for an engineering firm.
Oh, yes, construction observation.
All you're doing is watching and making sure that the contractor meets the plans and specs. Whether it's vertical construction.
Time, place, and manner, showing up once a week for the project meeting.
Yeah. In vertical construction, they call it the clerk of the works.
Right, different than the clerk of the works, but yeah.
In horizontal, it's a construction observation or resident representative. It used to be the term. I don't know, maybe it's changed now. But my whole point is there's I've never been comfortable. I remember talking about this on a previous charter review committee, and we got pushback from the building committee because they didn't want, we were encroaching on their turf and suggesting that maybe there was a better way or a different way to do it. And that was even before, well, I'm not exactly sure it was before or after
And we
the
have as a
construction
committee
reform.
more latitude to address this committee where it's not a state sanctioned committee?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was your question? Or,
I wanted to make sure that we had the ability to, talk about the makeup and the.
there's no statute.
There's no
apparently.
statute, so we
No
do.
state
An
statute.
appointed committee anyway.
Was that Mr. Piper?
It's an appointed committee so that we can't do things through this an election.
You know, okay, if you want me to, I will look at the Construction Reform Act, because I think it may have changed this concept. To me, if you hiring an owner's project manager, that was what I would call paid professional staff. Not a bunch of volunteers, paid professional. He's paid, they're paid to do.
No, I agree. We
Provide
always
certain
see that line item in any project that goes before us at town meeting.
So if you want me to research the Construction Reform Act and report back, I can certainly do that.
Why don't you, if you don't mind, in the pleasure of the committee, why don't you look into that? We're gonna cover that the same, I'll ask Mr. Golden to cover that the same evening as we've done the previous two
Yeah.
committees and try to get some standardization when we outfit all three of them.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table consideration of 3-16.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Okay, there's a second, and no further discussion, I'm assuming, we'll take a vote. Mr. Bolton?
Yes.
Table 316.
Table it.
Okay, Mr. Hanlon?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Kravako was not here this evening. Mr. Costello, yes. Mr. Hutchinson, not here this evening. Mr. Lawler stepped out of the room, we'll get back to him. Mr. Levin, gonna table 316,
Yes.
sir.
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Pizer?
Yes.
Ms. Coltrane?
Yes.
Mr. Zuparoli and Mr. Golden not here this evening, so it would be six in favor of tabling it in that, I'm sorry?
One abstention.
And is it an abstention? Yeah, I guess it would be. We'll call it an abstention. All right, an abstention. All right,
just a comment, while you guys were talking, I know you can't hear me well. It looks like it was chapter 193. It was voted in 2004. It's called an act further regulating public construction in the Commonwealth.
Oh, it's 20 years old.
okay, yeah, we heard you very good there, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that concludes Mr. Golden's agenda for this evening. Is there any new business that, Ms. Boltran, go right ahead.
One more thing related to this is, so when you're talking with Dave about this item, the building committee,
Yep,
would he be able to invite somebody or buddies from the building?
I'm gonna
committee?
recommend that he extends an invitation to all three committees, their chairman,
Yeah, good.
and just give them 5 minutes to speak in front of us. They can add anything that they might like to see, or maybe pulled out of the charter. I personally like when someone comes in front of us, it only takes a few minutes.
I agree, it's,
Yes, that's a great suggestion. I'll ask him to do just that. Okay, so, Mr. Lawler, we concluded the agenda for this evening. Any new or old business from you, sir? No, sir.
I have one very
Mr.
quick
Pines,
piece of
go right
old
ahead.
business. I inadvertently, using an example, made an error, and my friend Michelle pointed it out to me. The town clerk's office, I called a division, and it once was. It no longer is. The town clerk's office is now a department.
Okay, the record is now shown.
Hey, Len, if I might interrupt for just a sec, what was that chapter you quoted? What,
193, I think.
193?
193.
Not checked.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, 193, I just looked at MGL chapter 193.
Mr. Levin, you're a little bit broken up that time. Can you say it one more time, sir?
193.
Very good, thank you.
I'm talking about the town clerk department. Didn't we talk about having a section for the town clerk?
I think that was Mr. Hutchinson, so, yeah.
Chapter 193 was appointment of administrators, repealed, 2008.
act, the chapter 193 of the Acts of 2004, perhaps. Check that.
Sort of go back to the town clerk section.
You're asking if we had a
Yeah,
designated
I thought
section
that
just
we
for
were
town
going
clerk?
to establish a section for the town clerk in the charter. You don't remember that?
No, I remember we talked about it, but I think that the chairman suggested that we'll
We'll come back to
have
it
an
at a certain
agenda
time.
item for restructuring the entire charter, and that would be part of that.
Yes, so we're still planning to do that.
Yeah, I think that's still in the mix. All right, so if there's no new or old business, do we have a motion to adjourn for this evening? Motion by Mr. Bolton, seconded by Mr. Pizer. Would you like to roll call that?
No, I think by,
All right, by state law, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
By
Nice
acclamation.
job, everyone.